Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so today we're going to be doing a bit of drawing with pen and ink. So these are the pens I'm going to be using. They're microns. Mostly the ones that I'll be using are these two, the .003 and the .005. I won't really be using these bigger pens today. Obviously we're going to be using an eraser and a pencil just to get our general layout put in place. So let's go ahead and do that. So please take a screenshot of these two images. It will just help you as you go through your art if you have it open in another tab on your computer. So the way you take a screenshot is you push the Windows and print screen key simultaneously, and you'll have a screenshot that will be saved to pictures on your computer under screenshots. So first of all, I want my drawing to go to about here. That's where I want the grass to stop, and I want the grass must be to there. Then this piece of wood goes down here, and then obviously we have our water down below, so the grass has grown out of it, something like that. And then we're going to have our bird over here. So that is the general layout. Obviously we're going to just start adding detail in as we go. I like to just scribble. You can always rub out, especially with these, with a nice soft pencil like what I'm using. I'm using a B here, so very soft pencil, so it's easy to rub out. You can use other pencils obviously, but it just, for me, this works the best, just because at the end of the day I do like to rub out a lot, and if I cannot rub out, then I am pretty. Notice how the log actually has a lot of definition on it. Part of what makes an image stand out in pen and ink is if you use definition. So be sure to add as much of the log's layout as possible. Look, I'm jumping to conclusions here and presuming you guys already have basic understanding of art and basic understanding of pen and ink. As time goes on, don't worry, we'll bring out more videos which will be more of a tutorial videos on how to do this type of artwork. Okay, so let's get on to the grass. The grass kind of, there are quite a few different sticks and different nodes. So like we can even start adding the nodes here, start adding the bits of grass hanging off them. It's more of a right angle there. I like to be a perfectionist. I really do enjoy my exact grass stalks. So excuse me if I'm a little bit pedantic. As you're laying it out, remember that you can always change, and I might be going way too fast for the average person. I do apologize, but I can't keep you guys here all day for the people who really know how to draw. Okay, so this is our general layout. Obviously this is going to be rounded like this, just to give it a bit more of a water feel. And then obviously we might just add a little bit of water, something like that, in. Okay, so now that we've got our basic layout of our log, it's sticking out the water, what we're going to do is we're going to go onto the bird. Okay, now with the drawing of the bird, with the grass, the bird is actually only about that high. I'm going to increase the height of this bird a little bit to about that height, just because I do want this image to be more about the bird and not so much about the log. Even though the log will play a vital part in this, I'm going to just quickly add them in here. Okay, so let's just start adding them in. Start with the legs. Let's change the layout of his legs a little bit because you're standing on a stick. It wouldn't be natural for him to be standing like that. A bit smaller. Sorry if I'm going a bit fast for some people. I know that I am pretty much flying through this drawing, the basic stand. I will in the future do a much slower one where I explain to you every step I'm going through, but right now we don't really have time for that. So what you should have when you're done is a very, very messy drawing, and you can just start refining it and just getting it a little bit more compos mentis. Anything that doesn't fit, you can always just rub out. Don't be afraid to make a mess on your page as you're drawing, because at the end of the day, when we put the pen in here, you're not going to see very much other than the pen. People are always worried about their lines and stuff. At the end of the day, they disappear very fast when you actually start to do the actual artwork itself. Remember guys, don't be afraid to rub out and redo. I do this throughout my whole image, so if you don't like the way it's turned out, rub out, restart. It's one of the best things you can do, is actually just to draw, keep what fits, don't keep what doesn't fit, and then you will be able to, once you feel this in where you put your lines, then you will actually be able to find the angel in the marble. Okay, we've got our basic layout now. This is about where I stop with the pencil, and now what I'm going to start doing is I'm just going to start drawing in the pen and ink. So I'm actually going to start at the bottom here. So I'm going to start with a 0.005, and I'm actually just going to start filling in here where I want the water to fall. Don't be afraid to just go wild here. Make some of your lines thicker, make some of your lines darker than others, make them fade out. Then around the base here I'm going to make it quite dark. Now you could do the exact replica of the stump as it's drawn, but for me I'm not going to take my time on that, so I'm just going to quickly just draw a roughly what I want. Okay. Remember your lines don't cut all the way down to there. There's almost like an indip there. When you do your downward line, don't touch it to the thing. leave a space there for a highlight on both sides, because you need to know where the water stops and your stump begins. Change the shape of the stump a little bit on this side. That is actually deliberate, because otherwise it throws the stump off a little bit. It actually wants to pull your eye this way, where I want to actually pull your eye this way. So just be aware of that when you're drawing. This is my messy style pen and ink. You will see some much finer work come from me as time goes on. But right now I'm just doing a messy style. You will see in future that I'm actually a lot more careful usually with this. But at the end of the day, this is just a very short image just to see how well it does on YouTube, to decide whether I want to continue or whether I want to stop uploading onto YouTube for videos. Whether I'll ever start, let's put it that way. So just remember, if you've got a crack, it usually goes a little bit longer than just stopping immediately. Try to extend your cracks if you can. Obviously we're going to try and color in wherever's dark on the stump, leave wherever's light, and this way you will get a lot of texture in the stump. I do this very messily. The reason being for that is you can do it carefully, but at the end of the day it just takes you forever. And notice wherever there's a crack going up, it's much thicker at the base, because there's actually water gone up in the crack, pulls it up in the crack, and therefore it actually it works quite nicely. So this thing is covered in elephant dung, so you can also draw some of that in if you want to. I would draw it in like a mess like that, but you can draw it in however you want. I'm not going to put too much of that detail in there. I might put a little knot holes like this where the borer have eaten it. It depends on how you want to decorate your stump. You can do it realistic the way it is on the thing and put the dung, and it actually will come. So as I was saying before, so I'm rudely interrupted with the battery dying. What we want to do is, if you want to add in things like the dung over here, you can just do that by making it messy, and it will sort of bring it out that it is not a tree, or you can just add that in as a piece of tree. It's completely up to you. I'm just going to quickly do these other lines that I drew here. Just go ahead and fill them in, because obviously that is what I want to do. Okay, so remember that you've got almost like a white, let's just draw it in here quickly. You've got 3 layers to this tree. You've got that, then you've got that, and yeah, so you've got that is dirty, this side of the tree is dark and dirty and has shade. This here is white, but obviously it's got some streaks going through it, running through it. And try not to keep your streaks regular. And then obviously it's got some streaks running down, and give your stump some character, obviously. And then also there's kind of like white patches in here, which you can add. So remember not to do too much on these pieces here, rather just let the cracks run up, but don't give them too much. Don't give them too much dirt on this bottom section. Now this piece here we're going to shade a bit. Now there are two techniques to shade. The first of course is with a pencil, but we're going to do this whole thing with pen and ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some fine lines there and just go around like this. Obviously you don't want to end the lines in the same spot because you do want to shade quite a bit. Okay, now that we've got a bit of shading over the whole thing, let's just quickly go over it. The dark areas, like this piece here where this log has had his stick coming out, there's a darker area here, and you can literally just fill these areas in. All you're trying to do is you're just trying to create this atmosphere of an old tree, and yeah, I believe this is coming on quite nicely actually. Remember that some of this is quite dark here. Okay. Of course, you can make texture by shading in areas darker, which is what I'm doing now. As I'm just creating texture on the trunk, leaving some areas like this which will be pure white, and then other areas which you've made darker, like here. There are lots of different ways of doing this. Right now we're just busy shading, but there are lots of different ways of doing this, exactly what I'm doing now, and creating areas of lighter and lighter. But yeah. Beautiful thing with a pen is you can actually, people say, if you make a mistake it's there forever. Yes and no. You can always edit and you can always cut out what you don't want, and it's more, pen is more lenient than people will believe. Okay. Alrighty, so the stump isn't finished, but we're going to come back to that. We're not going to carry on with that now. I'm going to do the legs of the bird quickly. So if I've got the feet over there of that one, it's going to be interrupted by the foot here. So I can just put the feet of the bird like that for now. I notice these legs are almost pitch black, but on the photos of the ones on the stick, they've actually got a highlight. So even though you can draw it pitch black, just realize that obviously you do want that highlight. So what I would do is something like this. Okay. Alright. You do want to leave a bit of highlight in the legs. You can fill them in completely, but I wouldn't do that. That isn't going to be wise. And then I would also start doing, divide that up like that. Okay. Okay. What else do I need to do here? There needs to be another crack running up here. Okay. Okay, perfecto. It's just to darken this a little bit. Got to remember, a pen is never ever something that is just artwork. You can always edit with a pen. It's never permanent. And if I rub out my lines, what I then have so far is that. It's a start. It's always nice to rub out your lines every now and again where you have worked your pencil, and then you can see exactly what needs colouring in still, or working on still. So this needs to be a bit darker. All of this along here needs to be a bit darker. Make sure you run with a grain of wood. It will create a better look for you. This here is in shadow, so we're just going to give it a little bit more color. Even though it is white, it is in shadow. Okay, this is starting to take shape, this log. I think if I'm not mistaken, this is blue buffalo grass that has grown out of this water here. But I could be mistaken. What you actually want to do is make 1 or 2 nodes. And you want all the grass stalks to face and fall the same way. If you had one falling the other way, it would look completely unnatural. So just make sure, no matter how many grass stalks you're going to put in here, just make sure they all fall the same way. Now I'm going to do something that could make or break this image. Alright, so now we've pretty much finished that. Now all we've got to do is do the bird. Now the bird's going to be your main focal point. So yet again, I am using the 0.5. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to focus on the wing. I like to break a drawing up into 3 parts. This just gives me a little bit of a better understanding of it. So I'll break it up like that, 1, 2, and 3. Probably actually more slice it through there. So I'll do them in different sections, different stages. It's always nice just to break your image up and then you know exactly what you need to do. So what you want to start doing with this is just creating a little bit of a cross hatch. For that feather. Just bear in mind, wherever it's dark on the image, you want it to be dark in your pen and ink. Wherever it's light on the image, you want it to be light on your pen and ink. It's very, very important to just try and mimic what there is on the drawing. If you're going for a realistic, obviously you don't have to go for a realistic, you can go for something completely different, but I really enjoy my realism. So we're going to go on to the tail now. I'm actually just going to use... Oh, shit. It's always very important to just, whenever you're not sure, just to sketch it in. And this is something I do all the time throughout my image. If I'm not 100% sure where the feathers are supposed to lie, I will sketch them in and then I will draw them in later. So it is very important just to remember to, just pretty much just take your time on them. And then also just have the shadow, just draw the shadow in. Perfect. This messy style pen and ink is a lot more of a forgiving style. When we get to more of the stippling and that sort of thing, you'll see how unforgiving pen and ink can be. But for this part, it's pretty much easy to change, because any line you put down, you can always edit afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shade it in. Now that I've got where I want my lines to go. So awesome to be here, man. You know, it's so strange having to try and talk to you and do art. My usual style is I talk to myself and do art, which is, I know that people say that it's a bit discerting, but yeah, normally what I do is when I'm just drawing like this is I will just have a conversation with myself continually, not telling myself what to do, but really just to get what's the words I'm looking for? Just to settle stuff in my spirit. People say talking to yourself is a madman's thing to do, but well, if it's a madman, then I'm definitely mad and proud of it. So you can go quite fast with this pen and ink. I'm not gonna show you everything that I'm doing, but I'm just gonna fill in the black, make the shadow darker as it is in the picture. I'm also not going to connect it to the wing. I'm going to leave a gap there. That gap is going to be very important in the future, and you'll see why. So maybe even if you just do this, just to close that gap a little bit on both sides. You need definition between the wing and the tail feathers, and the way you leave it is just leave a little bit of a gap there. So let me just quickly finish here. Okay. Now we're going to start on probably one of the hardest parts of the wing. It's this piece here. It sort of goes like this, and it comes down with that other feather that hangs over there, and it goes like that. This is probably the hardest piece of the wing. It's a lot of straight lines. So when you do it, make sure you do it in pencil first, because obviously at the end of the day, if you don't do it in pencil, you'll be pretty. A lot of people ask me, where did you learn art? I didn't actually learn art. I'm self-taught. A lot of people say, no, that's impossible, but it is very true. I am self-taught. I actually did not go to any art school. The closest thing I had to art school was actually one of my friends. He said, no, come by my house and stay for a few weeks and I'll teach you how to do watercolors. By that stage I was already doing pen and ink, and I never changed over to watercolors after staying at his house because, yeah, let's just say that I didn't enjoy them as much as I enjoyed pen and ink. I like the black and white and the texture you can get with a pen, whereas watercolors, it's always washed out. Always, in my opinion. I'm not trying to offend any artists out there. There are some great watercolor artists out there. Alright, now that you've also done that, you can finish your grass stalks coming down to the wing. Maybe add one or two of these. About perfect. Okay. So if you have a look at the feather itself, actually there's a very light line just this side of the edge of the feather. It's very light, and then all of a sudden on the edge of the feather it goes dark again, so it gives this contrast. So what I'm going to do is the light source is going to change a little bit, but I need to get to the other side. So the next thing I'm going to focus on is this patch over here. It's got little feathers that kind of do that. Of course, yet again, I will be using a pencil first. Never be shy of using a pencil, because at the end of the day it will save you many hours of work in the long run. So I'm just going to sort of draw them in here, those lines. and then it goes to over here, and then there's these feathers that hang down. Kind of messy feathers actually. Like, it doesn't matter how messy your drawing is in pencil, when you've done it in pen and ink, as long as you get your lines right, that's all that counts. And then there's sort of like a black line that goes along here. It's sort of bumpy, and then it joins up to this black strip that we got through here, and then the black strip that goes down here. So yeah, perfect. Let's start. Okay. Also got this is very dark over here, so you don't actually need to give any definition there. You just color that in. It can be black because you're going to have this feather here, which is going to be very well defined. Okay, let's continue. Yet again, I'm going to do the same type of shading, even though this feather doesn't have it. I want it a continual image throughout, that you can define the feathers, but just define the feathers. So I am going to do the same type of thing on these feathers as I did on these ones, but I'm going to leave the pen on a little bit longer to make it a little bit darker. And I know that people are like, oh, it isn't like that in real life, but you know what? The reason I like pen and ink is you can change so much. Also, when you've done your lines, you can just fill in the rest over here up to the lines. It will help your image a little bit. There are 1,000 different ways of drawing this bird. I'm just doing one of the simplest ways because obviously this is just a pilot project. Okay. So what I'm doing is there's almost like a black streak through the bird of the shadow. That's what I'm adding in right now. And yeah. Look, you can draw this bird, as I said, 1,000 different ways and come up with 1,000 different images, which will all look aesthetically pleasing. I'm just using the simplest method here just to give you guys the ropes. Okay. So now pretty much that's my first third done. If you have a look, I sliced it through there. That's the first third done. Let's just do this little bit on the front here. We've got a dark feather there. Got that hanging down there. So actually this needs to go up here like this. Don't be afraid to just draw. Okay, so let's move on to the back feathers. Yet again, I'm not afraid to use a pencil, and this is one of the most important things you must know, is you must always be prepared just to use a pencil just to get your image looking good. So we're just going to add, we're not going to add in all these feathers because otherwise we will be here all day. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the prominent ones, and then from there, as we draw, we're just going to add in the others. I know that sounds like a big step for some of you, but you can do it. Also, this sort of goes like that. So I have changed the shape of this bird slightly while I was drawing. That line should have been coloured in there and down there. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, this is a pen and ink. So, okay, this here is very rough. That goes to there, perfect. And then there's just the slightest hints of feathers till we get to the back here. And we've got these feathers that jut out. Alright. Okay, now let's do the next piece of the bird, which is this piece up to the neck. When you're drawing, just remember to keep on looking at your reference. I know I don't really do that, but it's always a good thing to just keep on looking at your reference, getting the lines a bit better, and getting the lines where you want them. You can always change your reference. You don't always need to draw exactly what is on the image. I do enjoy copying almost exactly, but that's me, and not everybody must listen and abide by my rules. So just to bear in mind that you can always change image to match what you want it to be. For example, this is a perfect example. I've taken two different images and I've mashed them into one. So here I'm just going to go a little bit wild on the chest, because these feathers are very small, and at the end of the day I'm not going to draw them all in, because it will take me the whole day. But what I can do is I can adjust the shape of the feather and the direction of the feather, and just make it dark like that, and it will give you the effect you want of those particular feathers. So also try not to do them exactly on top of each other, or in a line. So what I'll do is I'll actually break that up by physically going in like this and just giving a few little squiggles. And what you have is you have a messy chest, which is very similar to what that guy has. Okay. As it goes up here, it gets smaller and smaller, the feathers. So just bear that in mind as you go higher. You'll see that I don't draw my outline at the beginning, I draw it as I go. So for example, there, that all isn't outlined yet. The reason being for that is if you do need to change what your image looks like, you can't do it if it is a definite outline. Or if you want to change the bull shape a bit, or if you want to change the head shape a bit as you're going, if you outline the whole thing, it is there and it is permanent. Yet again, you can see as I'm filling in here, I'm just creating the feathers borders. It is very important to do this because at the end of the day, you want definition on your bird. You want it to pop. You want the guy to, from a distance, to say, okay, that is a bird on a stick, on a log. And when you get closer, you must be able to see the definition and say, okay, that is actually a really good bird on a log. So It's pretty much just coloring in. That's all it is from this point. And as we go, as I said, we're just going to define these feathers a little bit more, but it's just coloring in really, and putting in feathers where you think there should be feathers. I'm not going exactly to the image. I will be doing some of those later on, but just as a starting of this channel, I'm just going to do a rough image. And also I don't want this image to be, when I've got a decent amount of followers, I will do like the 3 and 8 hour images. But for at the moment, I just want to do quick images, get them uploaded, and let's see how this YouTube channel does. Remember, in here we've got a lot of dark because the feathers kind of lift up, so we want to give that same effect, so you must add quite a bit of dark in here. Okay, not 100% sure why, but my camera stopped recording there. Done. I do apologize for that. I actually don't know why it stopped recording, but it did. Okay, I think it thought that I was not at the camera. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to do this head part. Now, I'm actually going to divide the head into 2 different parts. We've got the fine detail, which is going to be this side, and then we've got the not so fine detail, which is going to be this side. Now, obviously, different people can do this differently. I am yet again going to use the pencil just to sketch it in. So there's not very much to sketch in other than these little white tufts that come down from the neck. Those need to be, of course, white, as it were. But yeah, and then of course this kind of fades into dark, but that will be easy to do. And then there's a lot of definition here where there are kind of thick lines drawn along the edge here. But as I said, that is sort of going to be in the definition part of it all. I am not going to fiddle too much with all that definition. I just want to draw some of it in because it does sort of come onto the image. Okay, let's go ahead and draw this in. So remember that the shading there needs to match the shading there, which needs to match the shading there. So this shading needs to be a bit darker. You can always make it darker. If this shading needs to be darker, you can always make it darker. And of course, if this shading needs to be match these 2 different types of shading. So obviously what you want to do is you want to make it quite dark, but not too dark. So you still want to be able to tell that there is something underneath, but you also want to be able to tell that it is dark. So what I always like to do is, if you've got highlights like this, I always like to outline them first. Then you know where to color around and what to do. Yes, this is not sped up. This is me actually just going mad. So it doesn't need to be nice and neat in there. It can be very messy. Now my light source is going to change again because I want to color this way and I can't where I am. So we want to do long streaks running firstly down like that, and then sort of like all the way around till pointing almost up, and there are a few feathers that kind of stop in here, so you just keep all of that in mind. I'm actually going to run a line here from this side just to get the shape of the head sorted. Man. Okay. So that's sort of what the lines do. They kind of meet. And you will have layers within this. So we'll just add those in as we go. So you must notice also that it gets very dark towards the edge here, and it gets lighter and lighter as you get towards the face. It's actually the way that the shadow is falling, so just remember to put that in. Okay. If I'm taking too fast over you guys, please feel free to rewind, watch again. It's not a race. Let's put it that way. It's just that I am going to finish this one quite quickly now. Okay, quite happy with that. We will add more definition in here as we do that, but you need the one for the other. I'm just going to quickly rub out all of the pencil on the bird, just so we see what we've got. And when you rub out the pencil, you will always notice there are a few discrepancies, and sometimes those discrepancies need to be looked at. For example, these feathers here, where they end, it doesn't look nice, because at the end of the day there was a line there and it was making it look like it ended. So you can just end those feathers like that. Also here on the tail, you don't want to leave it open like that. You can just bring that line up. And here on the wing, and here on the leg. So just seal up all your lines after you've rubbed out, so you've got something that looks something like that. What we're going to do now, and it's not necessarily the right thing, it doesn't look like it on the image, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to make this dark here, so this gap stands out, because otherwise it's going to be lost. So we're going to make it dark along the edge here, and dark on the underside. This is not necessarily what there is in the image, but we are creating an image that so it stands out. Artistic license, as it were. Okay, so I'm going to start drawing the head in, and I'm actually going to extend this a little bit out to there. I'm going to start drawing the head in, and it's a little bit more of a bulbous thing than what I drew, and it's sort of straight actually. So I'm just going to add a few more feathers in. That's the wonderful thing about pen and ink. You must always remember to go small rather than going too large. Okay, Now let's go and put the eye in. The eye must be over there. Happy with that eye? Yes, I am happy with that eye. Now let's put the bill in. The bill is one of those really weird bird bills. It kind of drops there, then it picks up there. Okay, the highlights on the bill are going to be very important to creating this image come to life. Up until this point, we've drawn a bird without a head pretty much. And the eye is actually quite dark, but I'm not going to make it dark. I'm actually going to make it quite light. I take my time on the eye because the eye actually gives a lot of life to the bird, and you need to give life to this bird, otherwise it will be flat. Okay, so I'm going to put a highlight in it. Even though there is no sunlight hitting it, the highlight is going to go there. Alright, now I know how to draw my pupil. Now my pupil on this bird is a round pupil, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in. But wherever it touches that highlight, I am not going to put anything. Alright. Okay. Now, all you're going to do now is just sort of color in, make sure that your lines flow with the feathers, the feather lines, and you should have a image that's starting to come together. Now this here around the eye is quite dark because it is actually bare skin. I like to leave a little gap there between the eye. I'm going to do it on the other side too, and you'll see why in a moment. Okay, we also need to start putting in a little bit of a darker strip in here. All you do is you just add a little bit of pen, easily done, all the way up to the eye. And what we're going to do is we're going to add darker in here too again. Get a little bit darker. Like I said, we will continue to refine it as we go. When somebody comes up on this image, I want them to see it and say, oh, hang on a second, and then look closer. And that is what you're creating here, is you're creating this, yes, it looks nice from far, and then as you get up on it, it changes its whole appearance into something that is really, really, really likable. Okay, so now one of the big things we've got to do is the line in the bill, because there is a highlight on that and we don't want to mess that up. So the line in the bill sort of starts here below the eye and it runs along the bill. Okay. So you can put a line on the top of that. It's all good and well. Okay, and then obviously we're going to add the line in, that white line, that highlight, and that is going to give you a lot of definition. You'll see in the end that without that line the bull will be very, very, very dead. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're going to run this line along and down. Now we're going to run this line. It's deceptively not straight. It looks straight, but it is deceptively not. So we're going to dip it and then rise it and then dip it again. And voila, we have sorted the shape of the bull. It's got a bit more of a bulbous here at the end, but we'll sort that out just now. Okay, now remember, your highlights on the bull are one of the most important parts of this image. Do not get them wrong. So you've got a highlight that runs from this nasal cavity all the way down the bill to the end. Make sure that you leave that highlight. Also here on the top of the bill, where the feathers come off, there is hardly any ink. You need to put almost no ink there. So just be aware of that. Otherwise you can just literally color in this bill. Bear in mind there's also darker shading on the top of that line, so you've got to just play it carefully. You can see I've passed over that with a pen and I've passed over that with a pen. Let the camera focus. I've passed over that with a pen and that with a pen, and at the end of the day they are two completely different colors. And that is just how you hold your pen. I will do a tutorial on how to hold your pen in the future. Okay, now important, always rub out when you're done. Make sure that the image is what you're wanting. If it doesn't represent the bird, crumple your paper and throw it away, please. Okay. Three things I immediately notice once I've rubbed out. The eye, it's not perfect. It needs a little bit more color on the side here, and you need to bring it more to life. Second thing I've noticed, these white things here, they need to be skinnier in my drawing to create it more of an even flow. The third thing I've noticed is here below the eye, it's darker. So all of that I need to add. That's why it's always important to rub out and have a look at your work. And there are a few feathers that do that, but we'll get to those just now. Remember, artistic license always plays into this. You can always change your image slightly. I will not be offended if anyone changes their image. You have to put your own spin on art. And voila, we are pretty much done. Let me just quickly end this line over here. Here we go. I would say that that is a done image. Now, always very important to do when you're done with your image is to sign it. I like to always sign it somewhere low down, close to the base. So I'll put, and voila, it is now complete. Alright guys, this was my pilot project, this image here. I wanted to see if I could make an image that was YouTube satisfactory, and I believe that is what I have done. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you sometime in the next month.